Now that we've kind of got familiar with VEXcode v5 and just playing around with some of the commands, we're going to go ahead and move on to program number 2, which is now utilizing closed loop control for your vehicle. So very similar to kind of how we did, we went ahead and started off with a new text project to make sure that you're in the Python project. For the project name, I would go ahead and say still, we're dealing with going the distance. We'll put our name and the date. And then for the description, we're going to say that this is going to be closed loop control with a vehicle. And very similar, we're going to have to go ahead and set up our devices. I'm going to choose the motor again. Mine's on motor port 1. If you have multiple motors, you'll have to go ahead and include those. And then we're also going to go ahead and add a distance sensor for this portion. And usually the distance sensor can be plugged in on any port. I'm going to choose port 10 because that's where it's at. And what we're going to end up doing is I'm going to go ahead and collapse this menu. We are going to go ahead and set up, in this scenario, we want an infinite loop. We want for our distance sensor to constantly be checking the distance. So I'm actually going to go into the logic category, and you're going to see we have the word while. So I'm going to drag this over, and you're going to see we have a while condition with a colon, and then the word pass. So condition is just a placeholder. We actually have to tell it what we want to do. So if we want an infinite loop, we're going to say while true, and that's going to go ahead and create a scenario where it's constantly going to loop. And if you notice, there's this little line right here. So anything inside indented in this line is going to get looped as part of that. So I'm actually going to take out the word pass. And what we want to do is we want to drag in something called an if-else condition. So I'm going to drag and drop this in. And you'll notice this line now extends all the way down, and it includes the if with if condition, pass, else, and pass. So that means everything that's in this line is going to get looped. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a scenario where we want our vehicle to respond based upon a condition. And that condition, we need to take the word condition out. And I'm going to look now in the sensing category, and you're going to see now you have some object distance, object velocity, size, if it's an object's detected. And we're going to go with an object distance. And I'm going to drag and drop that right in front of the colon. So what we're going to say here is if the distance sensor, distance 10, dot object distance in millimeters, and we can always set up different units. So like if I select this here, you can say it can either be the acceptable values are millimeters or inches. So if you want to change this to inches, you can go ahead and do that. So you'll see that it actually gives you a little drop down, and I can actually click on that and put that in there. If you just leave it as IN, it's probably not going to respond. So that's why that they give you that option. So I'm going to go ahead and type that back out. Okay. Now, the only thing is we got to tell it what kind of distance we want it to respond to. So maybe we want to say, maybe it's less than, let's say 3 inches or something like that, or 2 inches. You know, how close can we get this? So the way this condition works is if that distance sensor reads less than 2 inches, then what do we want it to do? Well, maybe we want to go into motion, and we're going to take that word pass out, and I'm going to drop motor stop in there. Okay, so, and I'm going to take out this space. So if that distance sensor reads less than 2 inches, it's going to stop that left motor. Else, what do we want it to do? The password is just, the pass is just a place to say we need to put a command in here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that word pass out, and I'm going to say, well, we just want this thing to continue to spin forward. And there we go. So that's kind of the conditions that we're going to set up here, is that we've got a while true. So that means everything that's inside of this while loop is going to continue. This creates an infinite loop, and then we end up having that. Now I am going to show you, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to connect to the brain. And you do have to make sure the brain is turned on. So like if you ever not get an option, you'll see now I'm getting my options there after I turn the brain on. I'll select connect. And if I click download, I'm not going to save this one just for sake of time here. But you'll see everything looks good. Now, a couple things that usually kind of trip people up are going to be, like, for example, if I leave a colon out and if I click download, we will get an error. And it says an error has been detected. I'll say okay. And it tells me in line 54, we have an expected colon that now it's unknown. So once I put that back in there, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's right up against the true wording, we can go ahead and we can download and we'll see the error will go away. Okay, so we really want to make sure we don't have any errors. The other thing is too is the indents. So if I have it set up like this, or in this scenario where there's no lines for the if and the else, you're going to see that we're going to again get some errors. So because it's expected to have an indent, and that's how Python works, it's all based on tabbing and indenting. So in order to make sure that this belongs to the if condition, I'm going to put my cursor right in front of there, press the tab key. I'm going to do the same thing on the else statement. So to make sure that the line underneath the if, that means that belongs to that if condition. So if that sensor reads less than 2 inches, then it's going to stop the motor. That's the only command that belongs to that condition. Else means if it senses anything, greater than 2 inches, it's just going to keep running the motor forward. So, and again, once we download, we're going to see there is our code looks pretty good. Okay. So as far as commenting, here we can go ahead and say that this is an infinite loop. And then on some of this, especially comments would help that says, if the sensor reads less than 2 inches, stop the motor. Else, we can just leave the word else there. And then we can go ahead and say, I always like to use the word otherwise, spin the motor forward. And there's some commenting that we can do that as we read, we can see what's going on. All right. Download just to check any errors and then test it out with your robot. So you're going to continue to kind of play around with that and just see working with some of these if and else conditions as well as the while loops, and then kind of perfect and get your program to where it works, to where it's driving up to an object but not touching it. Okay, once you have that done, make sure you click the share button. Make sure you put your name in there. This will be program number 2. This is closed loop control. Now that we've got a sensor involved, then we'll download, and then you'll be able to have your program all set up here and ready to submit to Canvas.